Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Black Theater Network Literary Salon. I'm your host, Renee Charlo, and it is my esteemed privilege and honor to be with you on this snowy Sunday afternoon. Happy Dr. King weekend, everyone. So let me give you a little background about the BTN Literary Salon. I do the Literary Salon once a month, and it's to showcase the talent and the work of artisans that you might not be so familiar with. It's a time to showcase their talent, talk about some things they're doing, and just highlight and lift them up. So this week, I am honored. I am beyond honored to have Melissa Mickens with me. She and I are going to be in conversation about her life and her work, and you're going to hear what it is like to be on the producing side of creating theater. But before I bring her to the stage, I need to give you all the welcome from Black Theater Network. So, on behalf of the board of Black Theater Network and our executive director, Kazahira Sultan, I bring you greetings. We are gearing up for our annual convening. It's going to be in Los Angeles, California on July 26th through July 29th. Details, location will be forthcoming. But mark your calendars because we will be out in LA. And I do want to take a moment right now to lift up all the residents of Los Angeles that have been impacted by the fires and just lift them up. So join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. So, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. And let's go ahead and get ready for our literary salon. All right. It is time for us to bring up this month's featured artist. Melissa Mickens is an actor, writer, director, producer, and a teaching artist based in Brooklyn. A NYU Tisch School of the Arts graduate. Prior to becoming the artistic production associate at Manhattan Theater Club, she was program director of the Stella Adler Youth and Summer Shakespeare programs, as well as the Black Arts Institute coordinator. Partnership with the Billie Holiday Theater in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. She's a proud member of Actors Equity Association. Melissa was last seen in the private theater's production of Rococo, Chelsea, and at Here Arts, Here Arts. She has also appeared in productions at the Brick, Jack Arts, ARS Nova, ANT Fest, Downtown Urban Theater Festival, National Black Theater, the Lark Williamstown Theater Festival, and the Hangar Theater in Ithaca, New York. Melissa is also the award-winning creator and producer of a web series, Champagne, spelled with an S, where she received the award for Best Web Series at the Hip Hop Festival in New York, Hip Hop Film Festival in New York in 2016, and Best Original Sitcom Screenplay at the Miami Web Fest in 2016. Melissa is a champion for inclusion and diversity in the nonprofit entertainment industry. She's also passionate about the arts, about various arts institutions, and how they mirror the audiences they wish to include, transform, and empower. So, everyone, put your hands together for Melissa Mickens. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? I'm so happy to be here tonight.
Good. Oh, and by the way, guys, that bio was by her. So, I always like to give the source of my info. So we are happy to have you here at the Literary Salon. So let's just jump right into it. How did you get to New York City and the Manhattan Theater Club? Because that's a big deal.
Well, I'll say that getting to New York, the journey kind of started with my father. He was originally
Mhm,
from New York City. He
mhm,
born in the Bronx and lived in every borough except Staten Island. My grandfather was a superintendent for buildings.
Mhm.
So, kind of wanted to, during my college years, kind of spend some time where he grew up and became who he was. And so I found
Mhm.
out by not doing really great research during the college process, that there was a school in New York City that offered an amazing drama program.
Mhm.
So I auditioned for NYU and was fortunate to be accepted, and that's how I came to New York City.
Mhm.
Um, Spent my 4 years of training at the Stella Adler Studio of Acting, where I got my BFA, and I've stayed put. So
I see.
that's how I got here. And I think, what I'm learning the older I get is that even though there are plans that we make for ourselves, the path that we end up taking is very different from what we originally think that they're going to be. So while I did do a whole lot of acting out of school, I got my equity card.
Mhm.
I did internships and apprenticeships at Williamstown Theater Festival, at the Hangar Theater. I kind of got into teaching artistry. And during that time, that's when I started like realizing that, oh, administrative work is really exciting to me. I was able to do both things, act as well as, work with students in the New York City public school systems.
Mhm.
I also did work out on Rikers Island and at Rosie's, which is the women's facility out there, using theater as a teaching tool for um, the juvenile
Right.
incarcerated individuals out there for their science and history classes, but also using Shakespeare as an opportunity for male inmates and women inmates to express themselves and find a way to pass some time out there, which was
Mhm.
always rewarding work. And I'm really glad and very grateful that I was able to do that work at a very young age. I was like mid early 20s when I was doing that work. And so
Wow.
from there, I was a very good friend of mine, Jason Gray, who I met during the Hanger Lab apprenticeship program. I
Mhm.
discovered that he also was at Stella Adler, but in the conservatory program. And I don't know if, you can relate to this or if others who are watching this can relate to this. He was always that Black guy that I saw who wasn't necessarily in my program, but I
Mhm.
recognized who he was. And so when we were in the same space, I was like, we should have been talking for years. Like, we should have been
Right.
talking for years, because he is one of my very best friends now. And we've also done a lot of creative projects together because of that,
Right.
which goes to, I think, which proves the adage of when you see each other, like you need to at least say hello, because
Definitely.
you just don't know what the next steps will be with each other. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity to meet him. And he was actually the program director for the summer Shakespeare and Adler Youth programs before he went off to grad school. And he was like, Melissa, do you want to take my job? And I was like, I wasn't really
Right. Oh
thinking
no,
about
yeah.
leading a program, but sure. And so from that, that's really when I started um, fine tuning my directing skills here in New York, as well as like really starting to pay attention to the decisions that were being made in leadership offices and in leadership positions. And, all of it just kind of converged together as I was still doing acting work outside of school, outside of work, that I was doing a lot of Columbia grad projects.
Mhm.
So I was, going in the mornings for the director in class programs. And one of the directors, Kareem Fahmy, actually pulled me aside one day and said, "Are you interested in producing?" And I was like,
Yeah.
never thought about it, but
Right.
tell me more. And he says, I'm a member of this collective called the Rising Circle Theater Collective. And we're trying to push boundaries when it comes to works that are being produced by artists of color here in New York. Like that is our main goal, is to change the fabric of what is considered American um, in American theater. And so
Mhm.
that's when joining that then revved me up for, oh, this is something else that New York has to offer this is something
Mhm.
that really applies to all of my different skill sets in terms of organization, calendars, scheduling, networking, finding the right places or the right positions for people based on their skill sets and their talents and their interests. And that's when producing really started to become something that I was really excited about. And this was at the same time as like Issa Rae and Insecure was about what
Yeah.
just got picked up by HBO. Shonda Rhimes was, must see television on Thursdays with How to Get Away with Murder and Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, yeah.
And these were the Black women, the Black leaders that I really wanted to emulate. And I was like, well, I'm in theater, so maybe I need to start thinking about being in producer roles to, really figure out how to make the change that I want to see. Forgive the cliche. And so
It's
with
okay.
that, and so that's kind of what got me excited about producing. And in 2021, a position opened up at Manhattan Theater Club,
Hmm.
looking for their artistic production associate role. And I said, huh, okay. So I took a leap. And that's how I got to Manhattan Theater Club. That's a very long, winding road and long winded answer. But from my dad to now, that's how I got to Manhattan Theater Club in
And
2020.
and that's okay. Now, question: the Jason Gray that you speak of, did he have a did he or does he have a career with Billie Holiday and the Black Sea? Would that be the
Yes,
same Jason
yes.
Gray?
He works with Indira, and he
Hmm.
also,
Hmm.
me taking on his position with the youth, with Adler Youth and Summer Shakespeare, also allowed me to transition into being the artistic, of being the program coordinator for the Black Arts Institute partnership that the Billy had with Stella Adler. And that's when I got to meet Chris Berry for the first time, whom everyone is very familiar with, who's on the board of
Hmm.
BTN. And that's actually how I learned about BTN was through Chris and through Marcia Pendleton. So all roads have led me here.
And that is such a interesting answer because it is you've just proven that it's a small world in theater. I tell my students that all the time. It's first of all, the world of theater is small, and the world of Black theater is about 20 people. And I tell them, I'm not saying I know everybody that knows somebody, that I know everybody in Black theater, but I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows either of that theater company you speak of or that production that you were in. Because I always tell them you have to be very mindful of who you cross in this world and what you say about yourself. Um, because the point I was making to them is don't lie on your acting resume. I said, because somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows you really weren't in that show, or
Absolutely.
somebody knows somebody that knows somebody. Um, so just be very mindful. And the fact that I know him shows it is a small theater world. So clearly, your parents are good with your career aspirations.
Yes,
They
yes,
must be.
they are. They've I know what a privilege it is, and I'm blessed every day to know that my parents have always supported me when it comes to the arts. My mom put me into dance classes at 3. I
Mhm.
went to my first theater summer camp when I was 4. I was the third Billy Goat and Billy Goat's Gruff.
Ah,
And
ah.
and they were always very much on board with me going for it, because both of their parents also did the same of encouraging them in terms of education, in terms of you know um, we don't want to tell you what your path is. If this is what you're excited about now, then go for it. And there was never any pressure or pushing. And so with that, I was still able to do soccer and softball and all that stuff. But when they heard about the magnet school that we had in the Jackson Public School System, Power APAC, Performing Arts Complex, she told me to audition.
Right.
And even though I started late, she was very much of like, this, if this is what you want to do, then we're going to make sure that you have the right foundation to get you to whatever the next step is going to be. So, and my father was exactly the same way. He gave me very good advice while he was here. He's no longer with us, but He
Hmm.
he was the one who helped me fall in love with the performing arts in the first place. We would watch old MGM musicals together on Saturdays. Movies were our bonding is what we did, was go to the movies all the time. And
Hmm.
my mom, while she encouraged me to be in ballet performances and things, he was the one who took me.
He was the one who took you,
So
right,
he was the one who
right.
took me. So yeah, my parents were huge supporters, as was my brother and my extended family. So I was very fortunate and very blessed to have a strong support system and cheerleaders rooting me on.
That certainly is a good thing because I have students, when I taught college, I had students whose parents were absolutely against them being in theater because they were like, that's not a real career. That's not this. Even my own parents, God rest both of them, were like, that's not a real major. You're not
Mhm.
going to do that, especially not for a Black woman. That's not something you're going to do. You're going to get a real job. And every time I'm on stage, every time I perform somewhere, direct somewhere, act somewhere, or do something like this, I kind of giggle to myself and I say, you know what? Thank God that I had the wherewithal in myself to keep moving forward and to pursue this career in theater, you know.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
it's a blessing from God. So now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because you told me that you've been on this artistic side of theater as an actor, and now you're on this producing side.
Mhm.
So talk to us about what is a day in the life like for you? What do you do at Manhattan Theater Club?
Um, Well, I think one of the things that I love about my job is that no day is standard. So I do a lot of things. So I offer administrative support to our associate artistic director, in terms of like making sure she gets to meetings when she needs to. But I also am able to kind of um, take ownership of our Beyond the Stage series, which are programs that enrich the experience of the performances that our audiences are seeing at our Broadway
Mhm.
and off Broadway stages. So that means that I have the opportunity to build out talkbacks after performances that build off of themes that come up in the shows, whether that's a pivotal moment where, I know that that's going to be buzzing with the audience and they're going to have extra questions that they'll want to hear experts on, for
Mhm.
instance. This past week, we actually had two different talkbacks at our Samuel J. Friedman Theater. One was a partnership with American Theater Magazine for their Off
Mhm.
Script podcast, where we
Mhm.
had our playwright. We currently are running Eureka Day by Jonathan Spector on
Mhm.
Broadway. We had him in conversation with Isaac Butler, who is a theater critic and director, just kind of talking about his process. So we have that side where you get to hear behind the scenes of process and what it was like bringing the show to the stage, where it was both West Coast, West End, and now on Broadway, as well as community partnership events where we had an entertainment community fun night on Thursday, where we got to partner with with the Friedman Health Center for the Performing Arts, which offers um, medical services, doctor's appointments, etc. And they're doing a lot of great relief work right now for members of the artist community in Los Angeles who are looking for aid through the Entertainment
Right.
Community Fund. And so we got to bring some of their doctors on to kind of talk about, vaccination practices, public health,
Mhm.
and things that are kind of top of mind, which come up out of the play in this really hilarious scene that takes place on a Facebook Live uh, town hall
Yeah.
chat with parents at a private school in Berkeley. So that's one of the things I get to do, where I get to reach out to these organizations and say, we're doing this show. Would you be interested in partnering with us? We put you in our press release. So kind of doing that. Not necessarily a spiel, but saying we have a platform on Broadway. We'd love for you to use it, as long as we can, find um, overlapping topics that both highlight the work that you do as well as what we're presenting on the stage. So that's one element that I do. And then I also work with our marketing department
Mhm.
and our audience development work. So that's where I get to work with Marcia and Walk Tall Girl Productions, for instance, when it comes to community events Like I've been working with her on a project that she's been spearheading with Harlem Arts Alliance
Mhm.
and Harlem Hospital, where we're doing a book drive at our theater and at other Harlem Arts Alliance member organizations. And we're
Mhm.
going to be taking those books that are donated over to the Harlem Hospital as a donation with some members of our cast at Eureka Day. So doing things like that where we're also making impact in the community um, is something else that I do. I also am in charge of managing our student observers program. We have a partnership right now with Fordham University's drama department
Right.
where we bring on design observers, depending on the discipline, to observe our design teams for off Broadway shows at our city center location. So
Right.
right now, I'm coordinating two students, one for costumes and one for lighting design, of working with them. We've got uh, oh gosh. So they're working with our scenic, our lighting designer, with our costume designer. They'll also be doing tours of the spaces. And then I set up meetings with them with some of our department heads, like our director of production, our general manager, our associate artistic director. So they can really start to learn like what it takes to put up a show, even though they're learning about how they can fine tune and focus on their discipline. They get to see how that factors into the bigger overall journey of what a production is. And those are for our undergrad students.
Mhm.
Um, and then I also work with our design intern program, which is for early career professionals. And we actually had a BTN scholarship winner. She was brought on last year for our costume design observership on Broadway for Mary Jane. So I'm making sure that I'm cross pollinating both MTC and BTN into the work that I do because exposure is so important, access is so important, and that is something that I make sure that I'm able to do as best as I can, as often as I can. So doing that, I also go to readings. Sometimes we have internal readings. Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to go to external readings and write reports. Um, that was kind of my day yesterday. I was going to a lot of readings around town.
Right.
And I have a lot of reports to write before I go back to the office on Tuesday. And then, it's I work with development in terms of figuring out how to get more grant money for the programs that we want to do. And offering support to the shows that we currently have in production, whether that's talking with stage management, whether that's with general management, making sure, people are receiving honorariums for the external work that they're doing. So no day
Right.
is the same. Some days it's slow, not often.
But you say
But
not often.
not often. Um, because the machine is always running, the wheel is
Right.
always turning. Um, but yeah, I love what I do. I really do. I love what I do.
And that is so important because you do so much. You do so much, and your day is so full of creating and making things happen from different aspects. So you've got to love what you do
Yeah,
because it
absolutely.
sounds like some of those days are pretty busy and pretty full.
They are. They are.
You know.
And I do like the people I work with, so that makes the days a lot easier as well to tackle.
And that is very important. And I do need to say this to our audience right now. Melissa is the membership chair for Black Theater Network. Full disclosure on that. And Marcia Pendleton was our former public relations chair. And we miss her in that position. We have a new gentleman in. Chris Berry is now our public relations chair. I want to give him a shout out. And Marcia is how I met Melissa. So full disclosure on that. Wow, that is amazing. And it sounds like no day is ever the same,
It never
and it
does.
just sounds like it's a lot of moving parts.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Theater takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of work, as most people know. And I think that my background in being an actor and seeing at least what's happening on the stage and knowing how many people it takes to bring the curtain up night after night was really important in terms of going into this space. But then, going to a first rehearsal for a Broadway show and you've got everybody there, and it's always a moment where the director says, I just want to say, thank you to all of the people who are currently in this room and the ones who are not, because for
Mhm.
every production, it takes a village. It really takes, it takes like hundreds of individuals to bring a 5-person show to
That's
the
true.
stage, you know?
And oftentimes you see the people that you see on stage, but what I think a lot of people forget is there are a lot of people who you won't see on stage who had a lot to do with this show getting put up. You
Absolutely.
know, even if it was that person who you rented the costumes from, even if it was that person who printed the programs, that wig maker, that set designer, that carpenter, it takes a lot of people. That concession stand worker, it takes a lot of people. I was reminded by my boosters, and I teach high school. I was reminded by my boosters just last weekend. They said, well, how long is your show? And I said, I'm directing a little show next month, and it's about 30 to 45 minutes. And she said, well, if you want us to do some fundraising, you got to stick an intermission in there. And I'm like, say no more, say no more, because that's how them selling pizza and candy and soft drinks to the little children, it adds up.
Right.
And that's how I'm able sometimes to purchase things that I need to purchase for the cast that I need at a moment's notice.
Exactly.
So it takes a village. It truly takes a village. So now I'm going to ask you another question, and this may be a little controversial, but I think you'll be fine. Do you see many people of color in these producing circles? And why do you feel that you do or that you don't?
No, I don't.
Of course.
Um, um, I don't. And I actually had the fortune of seeing one of them at one of the readings that I went to.
Hmm.
Um, and I I don't really know why. I mean, I could say why, but I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not just based on what I have observed. There is, depending on where you start out, being interested in this kind of work, whether that's, I think like New York Theater Workshop has like a producing fellows program, like 2050, I think is their program, like similar to what they do for directors.
Hmm.
There are these inroads, but um, diversity is lacking, or at least when it comes to Black women specifically,
Hmm. Hmm.
representation. It's just not where you think it would be. There are these amazing organizations that are allowing folks to come together to network. Broadway Women's Alliance, for instance, is one of them. But there really is a dearth when it comes to Black women on Broadway, in the circles that I see as an associate, who are in the artistic producing or in the artistic offices.
Hmm.
So I think that has a lot to do with mentorship. I think it has a lot to do with awareness.
Hmm.
I also think it has a lot to do with understanding what producing is. Like I fell into it. Um, and what it really is, you're kind of like the best friend. You have to be the best friend, but you also have to be the mom in
Hmm.
terms of you want to make sure everyone is being cared for, that everyone is being heard, but you also need to be making sure that everything is going according to plan on the timeline that has been
Hmm.
created to get from start to finish. And so
Hmm.
with that means, managing temperaments, managing feelings and emotions, making sure making sure artists are able to hold in or look farther out than what they may have been imagining before. It
Hmm.
has to do with good communication skills,
Hmm.
navigating interdepartmental relationships,
Hmm.
working with vendors when it comes to marketing, when it comes to your press teams, right?
Hmm.
Your general manager, for instance, your executive
Hmm.
director. Um,
Hmm.
but it all comes down to relationships. And if you're a person who's really good with relationships and you're good with organizational skills and being able to see big picture and also being able to plot how to get there, then producing is something you should consider. If you are
Hmm.
the friend who always has the itinerary in Google Docs, knows where to go to get, has 3 different choices for restaurants, 3 different choices for places to stay, you're producing your trip. So it's just if you think about it that way, And I hope more young Black women and women identifying artists think themselves this way of, well, if I'm capable to do this, at church, with my sorority, with my cousins, with bridesmaids, then there is a place for you in the producing world as well. Because it comes down to relationships and it comes down to communication, as with most things. And
Yeah.
read those job descriptions. And I teach myself this all the time. It was also something I had to tell myself before I applied for this job, which was, I may not know everything that I need to do for this role, but I can either A, figure it out, or B, I've used this side of my brain for something else
Mhm.
that has allowed me to think the way that they want me to think. And so I think that's why we don't have as many. But I also think that a lot of undergrad programs don't have these as courses. So you can dip your toe in without having to go to grad school and be like, oh, is this something that I want to do? So I think it just has a lot to do with resources, access to those resources, and also just saying, like, just because it's producer, that doesn't mean something fancy schmancy. It just means that you're able to see something from beginning to end, and you know who to call to build the team to get that done.
See something from beginning to end and who can help you build whatever it is you need to create. I like that part about the best friend and the mom.
Yeah.
I like I wrote that one down because I feel like that in high school theater. Because in high school theater, not only are you the director, you the producer. I mean, even though someone has to approve my spending, I still have to come up with what I need and where I'm going to get it from. They just don't say, here, take the credit card and bring it back when you're finished. You know, that I have to justify what I'm going to spend, and it can't cost $2 million, but it also can't cost three, you
Right.
know. Um, also that time management and managing relationships. And I had to find that out this past week, that I'm managing caste relationships because I've got a bunch of teenagers who all want to help me do a show, but they don't necessarily get along with each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some of them don't know how to mitigate and navigate that. And I tell them that toxic behavior toward each other, that bad behavior, that's going to seep out onto the stage,
Yeah, it
you know.
will. It
And
will.
I said, and we can't have that, and having issues with each other backstage when you come on stage, because that means we don't trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
You don't trust that person to do what they're going to do, and therefore you're not going to do what you want to do. So getting through stuff with them and navigating this, and you're answering 20 questions all at the same time about do this, do that. Can I go to the bathroom? Is it okay? I can't come this afternoon. It's snowing. Just all kinds of teenager high school questions. Or I dated you last week, but this week I date somebody else and he's in the cast too. So, you know, or this has been my favorite these past couple of weeks. Well, I'm not comfortable working with person A or person B. And I can't say to them what I would say to an adult, which is, you're going to have to be uncomfortable working with people sometimes, because remember, these are still teenagers, and they haven't mastered that yet. So I hear you about the whole producing thing and having working relationships with people.
Yes.
That is, yeah. And that's interesting to hear that even on that professional level, that's still very important.
We're all people. And if we're in theater, then if we're working in theater, it means we love it. And so we want it to be successful.
Yeah.
There is a childlike love and appreciation of wonder and magic about what we do. And that means that at some point, at some time, all of us had the wide eye experience before we learned the real world knowledge. And so you have to always remember to go back to that of A, it's just theater, and B, if we do it right, man, how magical it will be, and how it will continue. That creates the wonder for the next generation to do what we're doing in 20 or 30 years. So we're all people.
That is the truth. When you say we do theater because we love it, because I tell my students that I said, don't do this for one reason. Well, two reasons. Number one, you love it. And number two is what God has given you to do. I said, don't do it for the fame, don't do it for the fortune, and don't do it for the notoriety, because those three things may not come to you.
Right.
You know, and then different. Fame, fortune, and notoriety are relative, because I have friends who work on Broadway, much like yourself. And I have a dear friend of ours, another board member, is in our town, which is closing tonight.
Yeah.
I have friends that work on Broadway. I also have friends who aren't working, or who are just going from, Walmart to Target to, gig here, gig there. And we all have that same level of education and that same amount of experience in theater.
Right.
It's just, you've got to love this to do it.
Yeah.
And that, beloved, is the truth. You've got to love it to do it.
Gotta love it.
You got to. So now, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
Um, I think it kind of goes back to what your previous point was, is, love for what you do, and that it's what God has given you to do. And so I I just want to be remembered for my spirit. And I this may be too much, too vulnerable. But my word for this year is light. In terms of, I don't really do resolutions. I just kind of pick words or phrases that I can have a mantra if I'm having a bad day. And so this year it's really about light. Whether that's, Matthew, let your light so shine. To remember whose I am and who I am, and
Amen.
also, lightness of weight, and carrying in that way. So, what I just want to be remembered for is that, I'm someone that is a team player, is a good collaborator, um, has more good days than bad, is always positive, um, no matter the circumstance. And the bigger legacy that I would love to have, that kind of came to me a couple of years ago, is that I want to be able to, I don't know in what way this is going to look like, and I may never know, and I'm okay with that, is that I want to be able to put drops in a bucket that create ripples that I will never see. So I want to be able to, I don't know what that's going to be. I'm still working on it. I may never know what it is. I may never know what um, my impact will be. And that's actually okay with me. But I want it to be positive. I want it to be good. And I want to be light. So that's what I'm working from right now.
I like that one. Put drops in a bucket that create ripples that you will never see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remind myself every day that the organization that I'm president of, Black Theater Network, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 100 years from now, this organization will still be around. And I want them to look up and say, well, our ancestors did this, our ancestors did that. And we stand here on the shoulders of our ancestors who left this for us to do.
Yeah. And that's a
Yeah,
big idea. It's a big thought.
it's it is.
It's precious. It's very precious. So
It is very precious. It is. Um at my high school, I was the first African American to direct a African American show for Black History Month, and I did this in 2024, which was just last year. In the history of the school, I know, in the history of the school, and we can't say that it's in the history of the county, but it is certainly in the history of the school. I did the first play written and directed by an African American. So when we got ready to do our poster, the my co-theater teacher said, well, we normally, don't put our, because I said directed by Renee Charlo. And she said, well, normally we don't put the name of the director, because it's a departmental thing. And I said, the only reason I want my name on this one is because it's the first one. Because when I'm no longer walking this earth, when I'm no longer walking these halls, I want somebody to look at that poster and say, Renee Charlo directed that show. And it was the first show done by an African American in 2024. I want to be able to say that.
yeah,
And some
absolutely.
theater teacher 50 years from now will say, well, I know they did da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're right, it's a lofty idea that you have there. So now my last question for you is, um there's some young person out there that
Mhm.
is listening to this, hopefully, that is watching this. And I'm always getting people, oh, I want to be in theater, I want to be in film, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I always tell them, don't major in theater. Don't do it. Do not get into this unless I do. I tell them quick, don't do it. Don't do this. Not unless you are going to do everything you can to make certain you take that career to the next level. My question for you is, what advice do you have for that young person that's out there listening to this and they want a career? They want to do what it is you do.
Okay. I think I have three answers. So my
But
first
that's fine.
is, so my first is don't don't poo-poo opportunities. Meaning it may not have the biggest audience. It may not, I did so many shows that did not pay me anything. Um,
Yep.
if it's a reading, if it's stage directions, there really is no part that's too small. If it's what you want to do, find those opportunities to do it
Mhm.
because that's when you find your tribe.
Right. Right.
And the people that I did those readings, those actors access, like two show things down in Bushwick, they went on to grad school and they are now
Mhm.
calling me, asking me, do you want to be a part of this project?
Mhm.
They're getting recognition. And so back to, if you want to be a producer, put yourself in rooms, don't shut yourself out, always be open because these are people that are going to become your collaborators. So it kind of goes right back to what you were saying before of this industry is so small
It is.
and you don't know, we read about like the Harlem Renaissance, we read about the Jazz Age, we read about the Black Arts Movement. When these people were doing this work, they didn't have, I mean, they probably knew how important it was for them to be gathering, but these
Mhm.
salons, these parties, these, moments in clubs, they didn't realize like how much the effect would be on the culture. And so you don't know when you're, doing a show in the basement of a community center that these are the people who are going to be shaping the stories for our culture for the next 40, 50 years. And
That's
so
true.
you get to be like, oh, I was in the room. I
Hmm.
was there. Instead of being like, oh, I wonder what it was like to be there. You just don't know who your tribe will be. So don't poo poo opportunities. If the idea sounds interesting, if you've never done something in that space and they don't pay you, it doesn't matter. Just do it.
Hmm.
You won't regret it if you do, because you'll learn something about yourself. You'll learn something about the process, whether that's what you do like or what you don't like.
Right.
So you're still always learning something. So that's the first one is to say yes.
Say
Um,
yes. Right.
say yes. The second thing I would say is um, find organizations like this one. Find organizations like the Black Theater Network. And I'm not speaking just because I'm membership chair, but there is value in finding spaces where people have the same questions as you do, where people are looking to build community. I mean, it all comes back to community, honestly, is say yes and find those spaces where you can ask questions and figure out the answers together. So that's
Hmm.
number two. And then the third
Hmm.
one is make your own stuff. I mean, I feel like that's kind of for nowadays, it's just so easy. Even though TikTok, RIP, is gone, I wasn't on it, but there are just so many easy ways to create movies, short films, monologues. We have
Yeah.
apps out the wazoo where you can write music, where you can just write your thoughts down and create them into beautiful monologues or spoken word pieces. Like use the camera on your phone to create the work that you want to see because it's more meaningful, I think, when you're creating things for yourself than if you're creating it for an audience.
Hmm.
Because when you are your true and authentic self, you create something that's so specific that it becomes universal. So find your tribe, find an organization that is also a part of finding your tribe, and make your own work. And that it all has to do with building up who you are, what your point of view is, And then the opportunities to produce other work will come. Opportunities of confidence will come because you're getting used to using these muscles and fine tuning those skills. And then when you see these jobs go up on job boards, you're like, I can do that. Or if I don't know how to do all of it, I at least know that I can use this part of my mind in a way that will allow me to get there. So,
And that part about making your own, all three of those are true, but that part about making your own stuff is so easy these days. Some nights I just, after I've had enough work, I just sit on YouTube and watch stuff. Everybody has a podcast, everybody has an opinion, everybody has a talk show, everybody has this, everybody has a lifestyle channel, everybody has a cooking channel, a exercise channel, a critique channel of the reality shows. I mean, and people actually look at it and watch it. I'm like, it's just, it's too easy these days to create it. And that's why TikTok, people were, there was a guy this morning on Instagram, on an Instagram reel crying about TikTok because he's like, I made so much money on TikTok because, you know, he was doing TikTok content and getting paid for it. And it's too easy these days. So we need to be, and when I say this, I mean people of color, we need to be making certain that we tell our own stories anyway.
absolutely.
We need to make certain that we are the keepers of our stories and that we are sharing those stories the way they should be shared. Most
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. And
Most definitely.
we need more producers of color.
We certainly do. And I always tell my students, and because all, you know, everybody wants to be an actor, everybody wants to be on stage. I tell them, I've made nice money on stage. I've made nice money on camera, but I've also made nice money backstage directing. I've also made money costuming, doing a little PR work here and there. You know, there's money on both sides of the stage. There's money on both sides of the camera.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
and in most fronts of houses that I go to, and I try to go to a lot of theater, I don't see as many people of color as I would like to see,
Yeah,
you know, and that's something that we certainly need to work on, making certain that we are making, as you said, those opportunities for ourselves. So, Melissa, how does one stay in touch with you and stay on top of what it is you're doing?
Well, I have an Instagram account. It's Rock Solid Mel on Instagram. I'm currently off of the platform. I was on it for a month in December and early January promoting a
Mhm.
project
Right.
that has since closed and I have since gone dormant.
Okay.
It's more of I gave it up for Lent last year and I didn't
Oh.
pick it back up after Easter.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
not really missing anything. So you'll see me again on Instagram when I have another project, and I have about two in the works right now, outside of my work at Manhattan Theater Club, and that's going to
Mhm.
be a short film,
Mhm.
and also my creative partner and I are working on a screenplay. So
Okay. Okay. So you're working both sides of it. I love someone that's working all avenues. While you are working at Manhattan Theater Club, you're still making certain that you take care of yourself as the artist.
yes,
And that is another conversation for another time because sometimes as actors, we're so busy sharing with others or giving to others or teaching others, we forget to feed ourselves as artists because as one of my self-help gurus, Lisa Nichols, says, you can only serve others from a full cup.
right, exactly.
Right. So Instagram, any other way to stay in touch with you?
That's it for right now.
Yeah. 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 Well, look, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us. I do appreciate this a lot. And thank you, audience, for joining us on this snowy Sunday night in Northern Virginia area. Make certain that you log on to the Black Theater Network website to keep up with everything that we're doing. And make certain that you log on to the website to keep up with the dates and everything regarding our convening in Los Angeles this summer. So, until next time, my Black Theater Network family, create love, create peace, create theater, create art. Rest in power, Intozaki Shange. And until next time, everybody, take care. Love you all. Bye bye.